on. And initially, what we typically do, we go into planning mode, right? What do I have to do to fix this? And that's what we naturally do as human beings, right? We get out our planner, we make notes, we schedule, we do all these things.
Right.
What we oftentimes forget is our mindset. How are we doing this problem? Is this something that's urgent? Can it wait? Do I have to answer the email as soon as I hear it ding? Or can I let it wait a second, right? And so what we're doing is we're just unraveling these little micro behaviors. That's what I call them, micro behaviors. And we're making these little changes that really start to put a shift in their mindset and their behaviors. And when we think about that example that I just used for that parent, when it came down to her basic needs being met, they weren't there. So drinking water, eating, sleeping, using the bathroom, right? Basic needs that we neglect because we're on. So what we do, we just stop, we slow down, we really assess the situation. We assess our mindset, and then we start to change those behaviors through strategic planning and through some strategic supports and intervention.
Wow. And so I know that we're going to dive deeper into the parent coaching in a few moments, actually. So for those that are listening, you're definitely going to want, you're going to want to listen to everything, but especially the parent coaching, because maybe this is something that you need and you didn't even realize you need it, but through hearing Grace explain exactly what parent coaching is, you may realize like, oh my gosh, sign me up. Grace, where's your website? Because I need a session with you. Or you could say, you know what, I have a sister or a friend that definitely could use this type of coaching. So you want to make sure that you stay tuned for the whole episode so that you'll be able to learn more about parent coaching. So we kind of mentioned this a little moments ago about the kind of phase that we're in right now of children are going back to school. And so I've seen a lot of reports in the news, just again, as you said before, parents are anxious, children are anxious. It's like, do I wear the mask? Am I not wearing the mask? Is my child going to have the mask all day? And I saw this one social media image, and it was this little boy and his mom is sending him off to school, and he has his, I think it's like a Spider-Man face mask. So he goes off to school and she's like, no, keep your mask on. He's like, yeah, I will. So he goes to school, comes back, he has on Batman face mask. And she's like, what? Why do you have on a Batman face? He's like, oh, I traded it with, my friend in school because his was cooler. And I'm thinking like, that's one thing, right, that a parent will have to think of, like, oh my gosh, is my 5-year-old going to keep his mask on all day or see like the cooler mask and want to trade? They're not even thinking because, we're still processing as adults what's going on. So could you share with us kind of what you're noticing as you're talking to parents as they're preparing to send their children back to school? And also you have an actual back to school parent guide planning session that you do. So could you talk about that as well?
Yeah. So when we talk about the parent sessions or what that would look like for just supporting that child, it would just be, like you mentioned, assessing our own needs and assessing what that looks like. Back to school is always an anxious time, but this year is even more unique, right? When we think about some of our kids, they haven't been in school for 18 months. So that means for some 4th graders, now they're in middle school, right? That means 7th graders, now they're in high school. And so the social skills that they would have developed within that context that are developmentally appropriate aren't there. And so oftentimes what we have to do as educators, as teachers, as adults is just support them along the way in teaching and reinforcing that. And so like you mentioned, they're learning new skills, and it's up to us to give them the opportunity to learn those new skills and support them along the way because they didn't have that social experience that they typically would have had. I remember even talking to a parent who has a 5-year-old, and we're talking about sending him to school for the first time and social distancing and wearing a mask, right? And he had lots of anxiety around what that would look like for him. And I said, well, one of the pros is this is kind of like his context or his framework. So he's used to wearing the mask in social settings. He's used to social distancing or what that looks like for a 5-year-old. So for him, that could be the norm versus a child who is used to not having to wear the mask, being able to be closer than that 6 feet or 3 feet social distance. And so it's really important to think about the context and what the child is experiencing that, and then work from their advantage so that they don't feel like it's a harsh transition back.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, so we do have our back to school parent coaching. And I know we're about a month in, if you're in Charlotte or possibly in the North Carolina area, a month into school. And I'm sure for a lot of parents and for a lot of kids, the first few weeks of school were rough. And I'm saying that from experience, I'm saying that from the words from my clients, from my students as well, right? Just adapting to, I actually have to wake up on time, get dressed, and actually go into a building versus rolling over in pajamas and logging in on Zoom. So there's a lot of things that have changed between last year and this year. Part of the parent planning guide that we do in the session that we do really explores, for one, the mindset. So we're going back into the mindset. We're also understanding the family's values. With social media nowadays, it's so easy to say, what is that family doing? And what is that family doing? But I always tell families, we will do what is important and unique to you. So that's why